So you want to buy a house, but you want to avoid using a real estate agent for whatever reason. You are going to want to watch this video. How's it going, y'all? My name is Jesse Lynch. I'm a real estate agent here in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and this YouTube channel is devoted to two of my biggest passions, one of which is teaching people about real estate, buying, selling, investing in real estate, and the other is showing off the amazing place that I live, which is the Twin Cities of Minnesota. I grew up here. I've lived here my whole life. I love it here. And trust me, I've been a lot of other places. I keep coming back to the Twin Cities because it is an excellent place to call home. If those two things appeal to you in any way, do us both a favor, subscribe to this channel, click the little bell to get notified, leave a comment, say hello. I'd love to hear from you. All right, let's dive into this video, which basically just answers the question of how do I buy a house without a real estate agent? And I'm gonna be honest, that title is a little bit clickbait, but not really, because I am addressing the question. But the first answer is that you shouldn't. There's no reason to not use a real estate agent when you're buying a house. And before you click away, trust me, listen to these points. And if at the end of it you still believe you're gonna be better off not using a real estate agent, and look, I don't care if it's me. I want to help you, and if you think you're going to navigate the waters of buying a home, not using a real estate agent or just using the listing agent of the house, you got another thing coming, and there is no reason not to use a buyer's agent. Reason number one why you should use a real estate agent to buy your house is that they don't cost you any money. A buyer's agent fundamentally can cost you no money at all. There is one charge that a buyer's agent or the brokerage of a buyer's agent might charge, and that is an admin fee, which is somewhere between $400 and $800 depending on the brokerage, but that admin fee gets rolled into the closing costs and the sellers pay for it, so it's not a cost directly out of your pocket. But that brings me to point number two, which is if you think you're going to get into a for sale by owner situation, or you're going to be able to just find an off-market property and navigate those waters, and maybe you're like, well, I'll hire an attorney. Okay, go ahead, hire an attorney. But fun fact about attorneys is they charge you hourly. Whether or not a deal goes through, you're going to be paying that attorney. And maybe you think, well, I'm going to get a better deal on this off-market property, and they're not going to have to pay the real estate agent, so they'll give me a discount, which is, by the way, a fundamentally flawed notion that you think if you buy a property off-market that most sellers are going to give it to you at a discount because you're not using an agent. You're out of your mind. Most sellers who try to sell for sale by owner, for one, they think their house is worth more than it is. Two, the reason they're not using an agent is to make as much money as possible, okay? Not to give a buyer a sweet deal. Overwhelmingly, they want to keep as large a chunk of that money as possible, which I understand, but the idea that you as a buyer are going to be able to go in and somehow get a better deal by not using an agent, you're out of your mind. Okay, and point number three, maybe you're not thinking, oh, I'm gonna go and buy an off-market property or for sale by owner and navigate it myself. And here's the thing, if you're gonna hire an attorney to get an off-market deal done, and for any reason that seller bails or doesn't end up selling it to you, you're still paying that attorney. So unless you get the first one under contract and done, then you're just throwing money out the window. With a buyer's agent, most buyer's agent, this is how I work. Maybe some would require a retainer of some sort. That's not common. But with a buyer's agent, I don't get paid until the house closes. And you don't pay me, the seller pays me. Actually, the seller pays their listing agent's brokerage, and then their brokerage pays me. Semantics, doesn't matter. But what does matter is that it doesn't come out of your pocket, okay? As a buyer, you are not paying any commission to the agent. You will pay an admin fee of some sort to the brokerage that the real estate agent works for, but overwhelmingly that commission comes from the seller, and that admin fee, you're gonna find it anywhere, and you only pay it when you close, whereas with an attorney or a lawyer, you're paying that no matter what. Little fact about lawyers, They like to get paid. Okay, and point number 3, maybe you're not thinking, well, I'm going to go and buy a for sale by owner. Maybe you're thinking, no. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to find a house that's for sale, and I'm going to approach the listing agent, okay? You follow? And you're thinking, I'm going to be able to talk to that listing agent, and I'm going to be able to convince them to convince the seller to sell it to me for less, because they're going to get the entire commission if they represent me as well. It's not going to happen. Not a chance. First of all, unethical. Technically, if they're going to do that, I'd be worried about what they're going to do to you, because that would be a violation of their fiduciary duties to that seller. They owe that seller obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. Those 6 things, if you think that that listing agent is going to try to convince their seller to pay it less so you get a better deal, and because they're going to get the whole commission, I'm sorry, it's not going to work that way. And if it does, you got another thing coming, because that agent is slimy. And do you want a slimy agent representing you? I hope not. If you do, then good luck. Maybe you want to get a lawyer, but then it's going to cost you extra money. And that's the whole point of this idea, right? If you didn't have that idea before and now you think it sounds like a good idea, don't do it. Bad idea. Okay, and we're just going to scoot over here. This is a side note. I'm calling right here. This is just a little side note. If the listing agent also is representing the buyer, that's called dual agency. And technically, if 2 different agents who happen to be under the same brokerage are representing both the buyer and the seller in a transaction, that is still called dual agency. This side note of dual agency, it is legal in Minnesota. It's not legal in certain states, but it is legal in Minnesota, and it does, without a doubt, present some conflicts of interest. Now, it depends on the agent, and it depends on the situation. But if you find yourself in a dual agency situation, I think you're really going to want to consider how much you trust your agent. As a listing agent, they already have this contract and a relationship with the seller. So are they going to be able to negotiate on your behalf as best they can? It's hard to say, and it very much depends on the situation. If you're just going to pay asking price and there's not that much to negotiate, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But if you foresee any kind of trouble down the road, then it might be worth talking to your agent and asking if potentially somebody else from their brokerage can be your agent or represent you in that specific transaction if you are in fact going through the dual agency thing. Otherwise, just be careful and make sure that you trust your agent and that you have reason to believe that your agent can be neutral. At which point, if your agent can be totally neutral, then you can negotiate on your own behalf and the seller can negotiate on their own behalf. But that being said, generally, it's best to avoid it if it's possible, without a doubt. And I'm even shooting myself in the foot if down the road I run into this situation. But look, I understand that it's not common, and in the case that it is, you want to be represented. I love that I can negotiate on behalf of my buyers or sellers, right? I love that I can play hardball and I can, use any negotiation tactics that I have at my disposal. But if I'm representing both sides, I'm handcuffed big time. And so is any other agent out there who happens to find themselves in not just dual agency, but the dual agency where they represent both buyer and seller. Okay, back to not side note, regular world, whole frame, that kind of thing. The next point of why you want a real estate agent to represent you and you don't want to try to go at it alone is that real estate agents have experience, systems, and relationships already in place. And it might not seem like that's that big of a deal, but it is. It's important. As a real estate agent, I have relationships with lenders, contractors, inspectors, title company, and I have experience with the process. There are very few things that can pop up in a transaction that I haven't at least heard about before, right? Or that I haven't at least heard of somebody experiencing before. And even if I don't have that personal experience, then again, I have relationships that I can fall back on of very seasoned agents or, a brokerage who's been doing it for I don't know, decades, So those two things are huge, but then the systems too of knowing the process, right? And knowing, okay, we have a signed purchase agreement, boom, next step is inspection, and here's how we get that started. And then once inspection is through, boom, we're gonna talk about it, and then we're gonna negotiate it, blah, 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 down the road. That whole thing of knowing, okay, next step is this, next step is this, next step is this. If you're working with an attorney who doesn't do this very specific thing on a regular basis, I don't know. Are they going to know how all that works? Is the closing going to be as planned? Are you going to end up without a home for a month or two while the attorney gets their ducks in a row? I don't know. Okay, and then the next point against representing yourself or trying to buy a house without a real estate agent is that when you use a real estate agent, that agent is always going to be under the umbrella of a brokerage. Okay, and a brokerage basically will have legal protections as well as an understanding of legal ramifications of certain things. You have a layer of protection in that brokerage. Okay, they have errors and omissions insurance and that kind of thing, and if something goes wrong in the legal paperwork or anything like that, you're not going to have to then pay an attorney to draft something up or whatever. The brokerage might have to use their legal team or something like that to breach the issue. However, that does not fall on you. And I do think that a level of protection like that is very important for a buyer. The next point I have is what I think is maybe one of the most important parts of the whole thing. And that is when you have a buyer's agent, or if you're a seller and you have a listing agent, you have a buffer in the negotiations, which means that you don't have to look like the bad guy. Not everybody is good at playing hardball, okay? And so if you really want to draw a line in the sand and you're saying, look, no, I'm not doing blank, whatever it is, then your agent who represents you can say, hey, this is it, they really aren't going to go past whatever, and they can sort of play hardball for you. And sometimes the ability to play hardball is the most important thing that you can do in a negotiation. And not only that, but an agent who knows the nuances of the transaction. They know as many potential avenues that can be taken. They've been in this situation before, so that they can see all the potential exits or the potential flaws that are in the situation. Then having somebody who is fluent in the language of real estate and the process of real estate is going to be unbelievably beneficial to you, especially if you happen to get into an even remotely dicey situation, which I will say it happens a lot more than you think. The last note that I'm going to make on this whole topic, it could just be the magic bullet that you need. Maybe you find yourself in a situation where you and the seller have already talked and you know that you want to buy their house and they know that they want to sell you their house. At that point, you do have basically two options, I would assume. One is use a lawyer or an attorney if you take that road. Hopefully, you use a specific real estate lawyer or attorney. Okay, the language is all very, very specific to real estate. So please do yourself a favor and do that. Don't use, the criminal defense attorney down the street that Don't do that. And then the second option that you would have would be to use a facilitator. As a real estate agent, I am able to be a facilitator in a transaction. Typically, this is going to be the kind of thing where I'm just getting the documents in order. The documents that are used fundamentally in every real estate transaction. And the commission for a facilitator is negotiable because without a doubt, it is a lot less work than the traditional route of being a listing agent or being a buyer's agent or certainly both. So that commission, like all other commissions, are negotiable. And for that commission, you are likely to see it considerably lower than the standard 6%. So that is definitely, if you find yourself in that very specific situation, that is a good conversation to have with a real estate agent. And again, the beauty of it is, typically, if it doesn't close, if something falls through, you don't have to pay them. For the most part, only when a transaction closes do you have to pay a real estate agent. Okay, and so all that being said, if you find yourself rethinking this brilliant idea that you had to bypass using a buyer's agent, and doing that whole thing, but you don't know a real estate agent, I know a guy, okay? And do me a favor, call, text, email, leave a message on my website, DM me on Instagram. DM me on Facebook. I would add me on Facebook before I DM me, just so I see it. Write me a handwritten letter or mail me a postcard from Fiji. Whatever you got to do it, get a hold of me, and I look forward to meeting with you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to subscribe, click the little bell to be notified, like the video, leave a comment. I look forward to talking to you. Love you. Bye-bye.